Hey, what's going on? It's Fight Season MMA, and today I want to break down the UFC Saudi Arabia card that is happening this weekend on Saturday, the 22nd. Let's get right into the main event. Robert Whittaker versus Ikram Aliskerov. The co-main event, Alexander Volkov versus Sergey Pavlovich, and some other fights on the card. Okay, so the first fight I want to talk about is Johnny Walker versus Volkan Oezdemir. I believe that Johnny Walker is going to get the job done. I think Johnny Walker is more experienced within the light heavyweight division. I know Volkan Oezdemir has fought for a long time, but Johnny Walker has got a bunch of different skills. The only thing that always scares me with Johnny Walker is that chin. You look at that Jamal Hill knockout, the Magomed Ankalaev knockout. Johnny Walker's chin is not the greatest, which scares me a lot. He's fighting back in the desert, if everyone knows what I'm talking about with that and that whole Magomed Ankalaev situation. But Volkan Oezdemir is a great fighter. I just think Johnny Walker is going to have the upper hand going into this fight, and I think he's going to be able to use his skills, his incredible height at 6'6", to be able to fend off Volkan Oezdemir within the octagon. Next fight I want to go to is Kelvin Gastelum versus Daniel Rodriguez. I know Daniel Rodriguez got cut from the UFC, but now is back. Kelvin Gastelum switched divisions, and his last fight was versus Sean Brady, and Daniel Rodriguez's, if I can remember, was versus Ian Gary at UFC Charlotte last year. But I think I have Kelvin Gastelum going out there and finally getting a win at welterweight. I think Daniel Rodriguez has had a really long layoff, and I think Kelvin Gastelum had a very interesting weight cut his first time. He fought a very unfavorable matchup in Sean Brady that no one wants to fight, and I think Sean Brady is one of the better welterweights currently in the UFC. I think Kelvin Gastelum is going to go in there and stand and bang with Daniel Rodriguez, hurt him really bad, and ultimately get the win at UFC Saudi Arabia. Okay, the fights I want to spend a little bit more time breaking down. We got the co-main event, and I did make a video talking about of how no one was talking about this co-main event of Sergey Pavlovich and Alexander Volkov, and of how I think that this is one of the best fights you can make in the heavyweight division for skill, considering that not a lot of heavyweights are skillful within the UFC. Sergey Pavlovich is one of the biggest power punchers within the UFC. He defeated Tai Tuivasa in under a minute. He defeated Curtis Blaydes by knockout. He recently did lose in his last fight to Tom Aspinall for the interim title, but Tom Aspinall is one of the best fighters in the UFC, so that's not a really big loss. Alexander Volkov, last time out, beat Tai Tuivasa, and I think that this is going to be a very fun fight going out there, and is going to be a very fun fight to watch. I ultimately have Sergey Pavlovich winning. I know Alexander Volkov and Sergey Pavlovich are friends, and apparently Alexander Volkov said that he has never beat Sergey Pavlovich in a fight in their sparring, so I can't imagine that changing now. Alexander Volkov is really tall, and if Alexander Volkov is going to win this fight, he's going to have to use his range to his advantage. He's going to have to use teep kicks and those long-range punches, because if Sergey Pavlovich touches him, it's going to go night-night for Alexander Volkov. Ultimately, I do think that's going to happen, and I do think Sergey Pavlovich gets the finish. In the main event, Robert Whittaker versus Ikram Aliskerov. This is such a hard fight to really break down and analyze because Ikram Aliskerov is coming in on short notice. Ultimately, I think I was going to have Robert Whittaker beating Khamzat Chimaev, but Ikram Aliskerov coming in is a different fighter than Khamzat Chimaev. He possesses the wrestling and he still has the striking ability, but ultimately you have to go with Robert Whittaker in this standpoint because there's so many questions coming in with Ikram Aliskerov. This is Ikram's, I think, third or fourth UFC fight, and it's a main event versus one of the best middleweights of all time. Robert Whittaker is an absolute monster. You look at that striking that he had versus Paulo Costa. He was winning that fight through and through, except that spinning wheel kick that happened at the end of the first round. Robert Whittaker absolutely destroyed Marvin Vettori, and he's had so many amazing fights within the UFC. Ikram could 100% win this fight, but there's so many questions that I don't think it's worth betting on this fight at all. Ikram is one of the biggest, potential guys in the UFC, and he is one of the best prospects, and this could throw him up right into the mix for title contention. Ikram has all the skills to beat Robert Whittaker, but ultimately I'm not comfortable saying that just because I don't know ultimately how he's going to stand up on a week's notice of knowing who he is fighting. Now, this isn't like a short notice replacement because Ikram Aliskerov had a camp prior to fight on this last weekend's card, but his fight just ultimately got moved back so he could fight Robert Whittaker. Ultimately, like I said, I would not bet on this fight card at all, or bet on this fight at all, because Robert Whittaker is so experienced and Ikram is such a good prospect that I have Robert Whittaker winning. But ultimately, if Ikram Aliskerov knocks him out or beats Robert Whittaker, I wouldn't ultimately be surprised. Thank you guys for watching the UFC Saudi Arabia breakdown. And if you really enjoy the breakdown, please leave a comment, like, and subscribe. And please let me know what if you enjoyed it and what you thought was right, wrong, because I love responding to comments. I'm trying to get to 1,000 subscribers, but let's hit 100 first just so we can hit a milestone. I really appreciate all the support, And if you think that this breakdown is correct and you want to see more breakdowns in the future, like I said, please leave a comment, like and comment and subscribe. And I will see you guys very, very soon.